What does $2 million get you in Oakland, California? An awful lot. Hey, this is Hans Struzyna with the Gunderman Group. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're here, you want to learn tips, tricks, ideas, data, stats, anything you can use to get an edge in the East Bay real estate market. And since that's what you're looking for, and since that's what I deliver, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like this video, because I know you're going to get some value out of that. So today we're going to wrap up the Oakland What the Money Bought series with the $2 million price point. We're going to talk about the changes that we've seen over the last 4 years at that price point, what it actually gets you, any of the stats, and hopefully give you some intel if you're looking in that price point specifically. So like the $1.5 million price point, what I saw is that the house didn't change all that much from a bed bath standpoint, and even totally from a square footage price point. The one thing that I want you to pay attention to, though, is the number of units that sold over the $2 million price point relative to the 2020, 19, and 18 numbers. I think that is a really fascinating market stat to pay attention to, and a general trend in a direction for Oakland that you're going to want to watch, because you can see it in the $1 million and the $1.5 million price points, is the number of units sold over that price point is growing. There are more people who are going up into that upper price point, and it's a trend that I'm seeing in Alameda and Oakland, and probably gonna find in some other cities as well. And then the other thing I just wanna point out, because I think it's really important, everyone talks about low inventory. You look at the unit numbers that have sold in Oakland in the last year, regardless of price point. We have roughly one more unit per day on average selling this year to date than we've had in 2019, 2018, and obviously 2020. Fascinating. So it's not necessarily that there's a lack of inventory, it's there's a ton of buyers, ton of competition who's pushing these prices up and snatching up these units at a somewhat unprecedented level. So look at those numbers. You're seeing over 3,800 units trade when you used to see about 3,500 or less trade in years past. So let's look at the data. All right. So as I've said, we're going into the $2 million price point. If you haven't checked out the $1 and the $1.5 million price points that I've done, I'll link to them up here. And I also have done this exact same thing in Alameda, so you can check those out as well. But here's what we're looking at in Oakland, California in the last 4 years. This is what's been happening. A fairly small number of houses, as one would expect at the $2 million price point, has been trading. They've started to sell a lot faster though. And generally speaking, this is a little bit skewed based on how few houses there are relative to some of the other price points when we've had 20 to 40 at the given price points. Not a marketable change in the bed bath counts, just kind of like the 1.5 price point, interestingly. But they, the size has gone a little bit all over the board, which again is probably a function of how few houses traded. But you can still see, last year you saw a very small average house sell at 1.5 versus this year and versus 2018. So not a lot to pull from that. But the age is kind of all over the map. And again, you've got a list price to sales price ratio. It's kind of hovering in that 10% range over the asking price, which is typical given the higher price point. You would expect that to be a more transparent strategy in years past. COVID, the 2020, that year, really bucked that trend for the first time, but you were generally seeing this kind of 6 to 10% world in this 2 million plus price point. We're back to that now on average again. But yeah, COVID really did a real number on the averages for one reason or another. Stuff listed around 1.6 was selling for 2 million in this particular case. And then you're seeing the square footages all over the place. And again, my opinion is that this is completely because of the smaller numbers. You have one sale that just is a total outlier. It has a bigger effect on the overall average as opposed to when you have 20 or 40 or whatever number of houses available at some of those lower price points for data purposes. But here's one thing that is really interesting is the high end has started to really push up, which has been really consistent. About 2 to 3% of the market sells above $2 million in years past. This year it's doubled. It's over 6% of that market is going well above that $2 million price point. You can see the number of units that traded here. And then you've got 241 all of a sudden that have gone above $2 million in Oakland. Usually it was double digits, right? Fascinating how that is really pushed up. So the high end has actually really taken the next step. And why that is? Probably because people are coming over from the peninsula, from San Francisco, and that move to the East Bay has really taken foot, and you're seeing it in these numbers. And I think that that is an example of what's happening, why that's happening, because the dollars that you spend, even at $600, $800 a square foot, you get a lot more than what that same dollar would buy you over in San Francisco at the $2 million price point. So I think that that is a big factor here that we're experiencing. So again, the makeup of these houses has not changed drastically, but the amount of property that has sold, what this price point represents in Oakland, has changed pretty drastically, even just this year. All right, hopefully you got some value out of that. And since you did, give that video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, because I'm gonna continue to put out content like this every week, and you're not gonna wanna miss it. So in conclusion, obviously the $2 million price point doesn't have a lot of houses. One house, a couple outliers will really skew the data one direction or another. And so it's harder to pull trends like it than it was at the 1.5 and the $1 million price points. That being said, the two things, again, that I think are really important to pull from this video, but then in general about this series, is the number of units that have traded this year is in excess of what we've seen last year and the year before and the year before that. We're seeing more units trade. The turnover is higher, but we're seeing buyer competition push the market up, which is evidenced by how many units are trading above the $2 million price point. So what you're getting is more competition that is pushing the price point. You're getting more units trading above the $2 million price point, even though there are more units available to buy. There's just more buyers than the more units that are available, right? So it's really an interesting thing to pay attention to, and something you really need to understand and know before you go ahead and try and jump into this marketplace, because that's how you get competitive, of course. If you want to talk about this, about your search, about anything I can do to help with your real estate needs, hit me up down in the comments, or I've got my email, my cell phone number down in the description of the video. You can hit me up privately there as well. So without any further ado, this is Hans Struzyna with the Gunderman Group at Keller Williams Luxury International, signing off for now. See you on the next one.